it's a German car company or a Japanese company or a Taiwanese computer company, you have to give us a share of your profits. Other countries are being treated just like Trump is treating Intel, the chip making corporation in the United States. Trump said, the Biden administration has been awarding you, we have scheduled to give you all sorts of support to build up our computer chip industry. All of that money that is already been promised you as a subsidy is really going to, you have to give us back something. You have to treat this as if it's an investment in your common stock, and that adds up to about 10% of all of your common stock. You have to give us your common stock, 10% of it, so that we can share in your profits. Well, obviously, this is a retroactive demand. This is a very close analogy to what the United States is demanding from its European allies. If you want our market, you have to give us something for it, just like if you're a American home buyer wanting a home, wanting to buy a condo in our building, you have to absorb all of the carrying charges for the building, including the ground floor commercial properties, and we, the landlord, get all of the gain from what is a commercially viable, independent property. So it's a slicing and dicing of foreign economies into what the government can extract from its government ownership of private utilities, monopolies, land, mineral rights, forests, and the whole works. That is now to be paid the United States. Well, you can imagine that's why we haven't heard much news in the last week for us to report, because I think all the Europeans, Putin is in China meeting with them. I think that Modi is going to China soon. They're all everybody's talking about how are we going to cope with the U.S. demands. Is it really worth dealing with the American market if it's going to be a lose proposition for us? Is there any alternative that we can make so that we could get to keep our own wealth that we create in our own hands instead of turning it over to the United States to dissipate in a Cold War that's a wedge blocking us off from making money through the BRICS market, the Asian market, and markets that the United States want to isolate?
Richard, I think one of the key points in what Michael just said is the Trump's rentier mentality. And for many of us, it's somehow confusing. In your opinion, let me put this question for you. Does Trump's rentier mentality in foreign policy represent a fundamental shift in U.S. diplomacy, or it is simply an extreme extension of long-standing U.S. strategies of extracting economic advantage from allies and rivals?
It's a little bit of both. It is a continuation of an empire under new and changed circumstances that the very success of that empire brought about, and which now threaten that empire, so it has to do things it didn't used to have to do. That's what you're seeing. So, yeah, it's a little bit continuation, and it's a little bit desperate new measures. The very fact that Michael has to say at the end of what he just told us, that Xi Jinping and Mr. Modi and Mr. Putin and others are meeting in Beijing, that's already a sign that they are doing what Michael says. Of course, they are going to be discussing a common problem that they all have, which is the behavior of a United States which isn't acting like it used to. Previous presidents didn't throw tariffs at everybody. Previous presidents didn't punch the Canadians or punch the Mexicans or now punch the Indians. And they have to react to that, and they will. But I want to go back to the first clip you played. Mr. Trump celebrating how he has gotten the Europeans to pay. Let me explain something, because the American public is so used to being told that what happens in the world is due to the United States that they don't understand when that doesn't happen, and therefore they don't understand what's happening to them. Michael and I have been critically mocking the Europeans for quite a while now because of their subservience to the United States on so many levels. They are now led by political leaders that literally are slavish towards the United States. Starmer, Macron, even Meloni, Schmerz, all of them. But this time, I want to take my hat off. The Europeans, which sometimes happens, the servants sometimes outmaneuver the boss, and they just did. Here's how this works. They were desperately trying to keep Mr. Trump from walking away from the Ukraine war because it's a loser, and he doesn't like to be associated with losing propositions. And why? Because he has already been associated with so many. Every business he starts fails. Okay? So he wanted to walk away. And he said to the Europeans repeatedly, I'm out. We're out. We're not doing this anymore. The Europeans became desperate. The entire politics of Western Europe has been to be the junior partner of the United States since World War II. That's all they know. That's how they all got a career, by doing that even more slavishly than other politicians, which is why we never heard of the other ones, and we all know their names. So, of course, they're not going to change. They can't. That's who they are. How could they get Mr. Trump to change his mind? They tried everything. Everything failed except one thing, which has now worked. They went to the American military corporations and they said to them, if Mr. Trump withdraws, then he's not going to need all of the missiles and all of the airplanes that you have been selling him and making a fortune, which if you look at their stocks over the last 3 years of the war, you will see they did. And so the Europeans said to them, here's what we'll do. We'll give Mr. Trump the chance to say to the American people, I won't pay for them anymore, but you won't lose the business. Because Mr. Trump will sell what you produce to us. Thereby, you'll keep the orders. They'll keep coming. We'll keep shooting missiles into Russia and into Ukraine. We'll keep using up all the guns and all the your business is secure if you work with us, the Europeans, to provide this solution to Mr. Trump. It won't be American dollars. It will be European dollars. And that's where I come together with Michael. We've gotten the Europeans to fund the military-industrial complex of the United States. And this will not end. This is just the beginning. So it's very important that you understand that. That's the plus side. Here's the negative side. The Europeans will now have to come up with huge amounts of money to buy the military equipment that Mr. Trump is now going to sell them. And where are they going to get the money from? They're going to have to go deeper into debt. That's what Germany is doing. And they're going to have to curtail their social welfare spending to free up the tax money to pay for it all. And that is going to sharpen the social conflicts inside all of Europe, because their working classes are organized, unlike the American. They have the organizations with which to protest. That's why September 10th is the date to focus on, because that's when the French have announced they're going into the streets to shut the country down because of its threatening the social welfare state. The new budget of Mr. Macron takes away paid holidays, reduces the pension, increases the deductibles on their medical insurance, and a whole lot of other horrific things. But let's not take a step. As they go down, the Merzes, the Macrons, the Starmers, they prove themselves able to manipulate Mr. Trump. They tried several things. It didn't work. They kept at it, and they came up with a solution. They will keep the guns and missiles from the United States flowing. The industrial military complex will be happy. And the only loss will be if Mr. Trump withholds intelligence and the active participation of the American military in Ukraine. And my guess is he probably won't. So that war will continue, which for the American military producers is very good news. And for the Europeans who make this happen is very good political news, because they have nothing else. In the long run, my guess is that the social conflicts inside Europe will get worse, as they will in the short run with this program. And that's what we'll be talking about in the months ahead.
Yeah.
Richard, I thought when you were talking
just to prove what Richard said, here is Lutnick talking about what Richard said.
These companies, though, Secretary, why shouldn't the U.S. government say, you know what, we use Palantir services, we would like a piece of Palantir. We use Boeing services, we would like a piece of Boeing. There are a lot of businesses that do business with the U.S. government that benefit by doing business with the U.S. government. I guess the question is, where's the line?
Oh, there's a monstrous discussion about defense. I mean, Lockheed Martin makes 97% of their revenue from the U.S. government. They are basically an arm of the U.S. government. They make exquisite munitions. I mean, amazing things that can knock a missile out of the air when it's coming towards you. But what's the economics of that? I'm going to leave that to my Secretary of Defense and the Deputy Secretary of Defense. These guys are on it and they're thinking about it. But I tell you what, there's a lot of talking that needs to be had about how do we finance our munitions acquisitions. I think a lot of that is talking. And now you have the right people in the jobs and Donald Trump at the head thinking about what is the right way to do it. I tell you, the way it has been done has been a giveaway.
Lockheed Martin is making more than 97% of its revenue from the government.
Yes, I mean, you know, it is beautiful to watch the ignorance on display. No awareness of what it is that they are copying. The arguments of the German Nazis was exactly the same. We're in a position, we buy most of what they produce. They depend on us in 100 ways. We could have a more efficient arrangement. It's the same logic that makes a big company buy a small one. It's more efficient if they're internal than external. I used to love it because I used to explain to these people in seminars when they would call me in, because I'm a professor, they assumed I thought the way they did. And I would say to them, the entire logic of economics, celebrating the market, is for these 27 reasons. If you buy a company, you are destroying the market. There is no market anymore. That has become an internal operation. You criticize the Soviet Union because everything is internal to the government. That's what you're doing. And they would look at me like little puppies who have just done something on the family rug that they shouldn't have, because they didn't know the answer. They want the professor to celebrate the market as they destroy the market, as they refuse the market, and tell you how much more efficient we can be if we don't have a market. That's fascism. That's what it is about. It's about state running capitalist enterprises so that the state enforces the capitalist system for the benefit of the rich. Notice that when Mr. Lutnick or Mr. Trump talk about it, it's about the rich. We're going to get richer. We're going to have more GDP. In socialist countries, when the government takes over private enterprise, it's about raising the country out of poverty, lifting the wages. It's a completely, and I'm not happy with what goes on. I'm not endorsing China or any of this. But it's using the state merger with the private for a very different purpose, a whole different set of goals in the case of a China or a Russia than you have here. And therein lies the difference. It's as if you didn't understand, they're the same thing. They have a president, they have a president. Yeah, but what the president means differs in one country from another. They're not the same because they have something similar. I mean, that's childish way of thinking. I've had that all my life when people tell me, Stalin was a dictator and Hitler was a dictator. Oh, goodness, that's true. They both urinated standing up. That doesn't mean very much. Doesn't make them the same. For God's sake, did you notice that they went to war and killed each other in huge numbers? Might give you a clue that they had some differences.
Go ahead, Mike.
Every economy is a market. Finance capitalism is a market. Socialism is a market. Richard, I'm trying to figure out what you were saying at the very beginning. You said that Europe had a positive response to the United States. I thought that what the positive response you were going to talk about was Europe would have said, well, you're saying that we have to pay the costs of fighting Ukraine now that the United States paid before by largely having fighting with American arms. I thought Europe's response could have said, well, we are going to fight Ukraine, but we're going to fight it with Europe's and Germany's military industrial complex. We're going to fight it with Rheinmetall and the other companies. And in fact, the European stock market has been going up more than the U.S. stock market. International stock market investors are shifting out of the U.S. market into the European market, and much of this investment is going into Europe's own military industrial complex. That could have been the response by Europe, saying, well, if we are going to have to bear the costs of war fighting with Ukraine, we have to afford it. We can't, and the only way we can afford it in terms of two ways. One, the budget costs of our own budget deficit, which is limited, and two, the balance of payments costs. Richard, you pointed out that the only way, correctly, that Europe could afford to buy American arms along the lines that Donald Trump has outlined is to borrow the money. Well, that's quite right. Well, if Europeans borrow the money, this is going to cause a demand for dollars, basically, out of the euros. That's going to support the dollar's exchange rate. Just the opposite of what Trump wants, to push the exchange rate down. And in a way, this is a transfer problem, it's called, is very different from the domestic budgetary problem. as long as Europe insists in counting its foreign exchange dollar spending as part of its domestic economy, then of course there's going to be a forced cutback in social spending. And that's why, as you point out, the French are rebelling in a few weeks, because the France's foreign debt has gone up, and causing Macron to very sharply increase taxes. So what Europeans are seeing is, in a way, the same kind of problem that Americans are seeing. They're saying, we can't get housing. We can't afford to meet our basic expenditures because the government has cut back its social spending, and because of all of this financial inflation of real estate prices. So we see the financiers, the bankers, and the absentee owners, and the monopolists all getting rich, and we're getting poorer and poorer. That's what inequality and polarization is, what has been leading to revolutions ever since the French Revolution. So that's part of the problem. And I think if we're talking about the how the United States is trying to force the costs of war onto its allies, look at what's happened in South Korea in the last few days. The president of South Korea has been over here in the United States, and the United States is saying, well, you're going to now have to pay for all of our troops in South Korea to protect you from China. And the Korean president pointed out, China is our main export market. China is our main import market. Most of our relations are China. Why are you trying to force us to decide between relations with China, which it means our entire economic future, or the United States, which we don't see a future on, because I don't see how we can make the money, the dollars, to pay for the American military industrial arms in your occupation without being able to export our cars and our electronics to you. And you've just raised the tariffs to prevent us from exporting cars and computers to you. So you've made it impossible for us to bear the costs of supporting American military defense. Maybe we have a solution. Maybe for $100 in total, we can meet with the Chinese and say, let's have peace, not war. Let's make a non-aggression pact, and let's restructure our trade. We realize that we've lost the U.S. market forever. We are willing to tell the United States what Iraq has told the United States. Get out of our country. We cannot afford you. We don't have the money to pay you, and we're not going to devalue our currency by buying dollars in order to pay for your occupation. The costs of being your ally means our national bankruptcy, and we can't afford it. That is essentially what the Korean president said. It is what the European opposition parties are in a position to say once the current NATO leadership of Merz and Macron and Starmer are replaced by what I guess a kind of either right-wing or left-wing nationalist parties that say we cannot afford the terms of the war with Russia that Donald Trump has said we have to have, of essentially becoming a servant economy, a servile economy to the United States. We simply cannot afford war anymore. It's time to negotiate peace. Well, Trump ran on pretended to be a peace president. He's the largest war president in American history. He's declared war on multiple fronts, not only against Russia, not only against Gaza, not only against Venezuela, but against Azerbaijan, against China in the China Sea, against Syria by backing al-Qaeda. There's a war all over the place from Trump. And the fact is that this multi-front Cold War that Trump has expanded on, America's war against the whole rest of the world, cannot be afforded by foreign countries. They're not going to pay for America's war against them, designed to prevent them from earning the money to pay for the war by trading with China and the BRICS and the global majority, which is the growth area of the world. There is literally no alternative, as Margaret Thatcher would say, to saying we cannot afford the Cold War on American terms. And the fact is, we can negotiate peace among ourselves and have the kind of trading relation, multipolar trading relationship that the United States pretended to introduce back in 1945. So you're having, this is a whole split in the whole way in which the the world economy is organized, as we've been talking about all along.
Richard,
could I just one comment on that before we go ahead? I want to go back to my story about the Europeans. The reason, Michael is right, the preferred thing they would do and what they talk about is building up their military capacity. But this is, if you pardon my Spanish, bullshit. They can't do that because they haven't done it for 75 years. Their military is laughable. It's too small. It's poorly equipped. They don't have anything. If the United States withdraws its military equipment from Ukraine, the Russian victory becomes a rout. It's halfway there already. They can't stop it. Okay? And they will look as weak and ineffective as they actually are. And they know it. So what they need several years, even if that will be enough, to try to catch up in some meaningful sense so they have a credible military apparatus. That's all they need. And that's what they figured out how to get. Mr. Trump will provide them with enough of the extra American stuff that they can hold on, which means they now have an immense vested interest in keeping the war in Ukraine going, which you can see by everything they say and do. And they will have an enormous ally in the American military-industrial complex, which will need that war to continue so that they can sell the arms to Trump, who resells them to the Europeans. So they've got their political ducks in a row. They'll keep this war going. It'll last another 2 or 3 years. That will be costly for the Russians. They like that. And then hopefully they will have spent the money. The only possible danger is that the mass of people, the working classes in England, France, Germany, and Italy, will step in and say, no, you can't do that. I want to remind people, when Mr. Macron tried to delay pensions by making the pension eligible age go from 62 years age to 64,